Hey, with you evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
I can't take it anymore, Alice said, almost crying. The contractions had been going on for over 6 hours. Well, bear with me, honey, just a little longer. Andrew tried his best to support his wife. The woman was pregnant with twins. It was a very long-awaited child. After 10 years of unsuccessful attempts to get pregnant, Alice finally saw 2 stripes on the test. Found out at an ultrasound that they were having twins. The couple were happy. The labor was hard. The babies are quite large, and the mother is petite, fragile. She gave birth weighing only 54 kilograms. But the woman refused the caesarean section, although the doctors insisted. She decided that it would be better for the children to be born naturally. Andrew all this time did not leave her, stroking her back, stroking her tummy, holding her hand during another contraction, and his moral support was enormous. Alice understood it perfectly well, but still during the peak of pain her husband annoyed her. It's good for you to say you're not the one in labor. It's like I have 2 watermelons inside me, at least 10 pounds each. Do you know how much it hurts? The woman in labor didn't have time to say anything else. Another spasm wrote her off again. Finally, the twins were born. It was the happiest day of Alice and Andrew's life. They had given birth to boys who were named Liam and Nick. The woman thought the hardest part was over, but the difficulties were just beginning. Sleepless nights and colic and teething. Alice had experienced the happiness of motherhood. Andrew worked from morning till night to provide everything the family needed. And of course, it was foolish to expect help from him. The young mom was helped by her mother-in-law, Nicole. She visited her son almost daily. Alice and her mother-in-law never had 2 warm relations. Before the birth of babies, saw rarely. Her husband's mother tried to stay out of the life of the young couple. Daughter-in-law was very grateful to her for this, but no more. So now the presence of the mother-in-law a little strained Alice. But her help turned out to be just right. She understood that. Nicole looked after the boys, giving her sister-in-law a chance to rest, cooked meals and cleaned the house. Time passed. Nick and Liam grew up, and her mother-in-law's help was needed less and less. Soon she started coming to see her grandchildren only a few times a month, and when her sons turned 3, Alice decided to go to work. She put the boy in daycare so she could work full-time. Alice was an excellent professional with quite a bit of experience, so there were no problems with employment. It gave her spouse an opportunity, finally, to exhale a little, not to load himself up with extra work like he used to. Life was slowly returning to a normal rhythm. Alice had no sooner blinked than her sons had grown up, as if yesterday they were still packing diapers together and taking turns, and today they are already thinking about where to go to school. The mother has long since barely reached their shoulder. My big boys. I thought the woman was furtively wiping away a tear. They've been distant from their mom lately. It's understandable, being teenagers. They each have their own interests, their own friends. And growing up men were much more interesting with their father than with her. Alice grew sad. The boys were hardly ever home, and neither was her husband. He had been traveling a lot lately, and the relationship between the couple was not the same as before. Andrew began to treat her coldly, no more compliments, no more flowers. Alice could not even remember the last time they went out together with the family. It was frustrating, and when she was desperate, fate gave her an unexpected gift. One morning, right after breakfast, she felt sick, her stomach twisted, and her throat felt uncomfortable. Alice hoped that it would pass, but her body told her that she had to run to the toilet. That's weird. What could I have eaten? I think we all ate the same thing. In the evening, the situation was the same again. She felt nauseous. So the woman decided to buy a test. There was little hope that she was pregnant, because she was already 42 years old, but it was worth a test. What was her surprise when the test showed 2 stripes? Alice could not believe in her happiness. She could hardly wait for her husband from his favorite job. I have some good news for you. One more is coming soon. Andrew looked at his wife with surprise. What do you mean? But don't tell me you want to get a cat or a dog. Alice laughed. No, you fool, and held out the test to him. We're going to be young parents with you again soon. Alice expected a strong reaction, but her husband was surprisingly calm. One might even have thought indifferent. Interesting, well, Two we were able to put on their feet, and the third. The woman clung to her husband, and if it's a girl will be, you imagine a little old man with your eyes, she will be adorable. A spouse carefully freed himself from the embrace. It doesn't matter. A girl, boy. The main thing to be healthy. After all, age is taking its toll. Pregnancy in your 20s isn't the same as in your 40s. Do you need to take care? I'll find you the best doctors tomorrow. Alice agreed with every word he said. The next day, she checked in at the women's clinic. The pregnancy proceeded wonderfully. The woman carefully followed the recommendations of her doctor. The day of the next ultrasound examination came. Alice, with a sinking heart, went to the reception. Today, it promised to determine the sex of the baby. She repeated to herself like a mantra. The main thing was that the baby was healthy. Who will be born, a girl or a boy? It doesn't matter. But it did matter to her. She'd always dreamed of having a little girl. She imagined how she would hide her pigtails, take her to dance class, help her get ready for a date. Today, at last, she would know who she was carrying under her heart. Alice lay on the cold couch. The doctor was slowly guiding her tummy. I don't know if I'll be able to tell the sex of the baby today. The baby is so round and round. I can't tell. The woman said, William, I'm not leaving until I know. It's important to me, and I'm asking you to please try to consider who's going to be a girl or a boy. The doctor looked at the pregnant woman with a smile. I will do my best. After a few minutes, the man joyfully exclaimed, there are. And I know the sex. Are you ready to find out? Alice's eyes lit up. Her heart was pounding frantically as if trying to burst out of her chest. Well, William, do not pull, and now already consciousness will lose tension. The doctor laughed. You can all inhale and take congratulations. Are you having a daughter? A loud and happy shout ran down the corridor of the clinic. Yay. 8 months later, the long-awaited baby girl was born. They named her Jana. Alice had wanted to call her daughter since she was a student. Andrew met his wife coldly from the hospital. There was no that festive mood, which was present when Alice was discharged from the hospital. After the first birth, was the woman offended? Well, you could have at least bought me some flowers, couldn't you? The man just waved her off. It's just a broom. Why would you spend money on something like that? You must realize we're going to have to raise expenses again. Every penny will be counted. That's why it would be reckless to spend money on such a trifle as a bouquet. Alice had to swallow her resentment. Several years passed. The relationship between the couple was still strained. They were more like neighbors than a married couple. There was no trace of the former love and tenderness, all their care and attention. Alice now gave to her daughter, and she reciprocated it with her childish sincerity. Nicole, too, had a heart for her granddaughter, often visited her, gave her gifts, bought her beautiful dresses, and she grew up, a sweet and clever girl. When she was 3, her mother put her in ballet school. The little girl did well. Her teachers predicted a great future in dance. Christmas was coming. Alice wanted to buy her daughter the dolls she dreamed of and asked her mother-in-law to watch the girl while she went to the mall. Her husband was late at work, as usual, so Nicole had to be asked. The fox strolled leisurely through the stores. She couldn't remember the last time she had been alone, but suddenly a couple at the store with fur coats attracted her attention. They were talking cheerfully, and the man pressed his companion, spectacular, slender blonde, a little hubbed. In front of the window they entered the store. This can't be happening, whispered Alice. Quickly she ran into the nearest department, hiding behind a mannequin by us. It would be a disaster if she was spotted. After all, the man who was hugging the blonde was none other than her husband Andrew. Blood led to risks. Her heart was beating frantically in her chest. Alice could hardly wait for the loving couple to leave the store. Soon they emerged. The man was holding a large bag, apparently with a fur coat. The wife waited until the lovers passed by, only then went out of the department. The woman did not care much about the looks the counselor gave her. Now she was thinking of only one thing. Alice hailed a cab and slipped stealthily into the street. Only when she got into the car could she breathe out a sigh of relief. All the way she drove, staring at one point. Nicole immediately noticed that something had happened to her sister-in-law. She decided to keep her questions to herself. Alice did not even want to remember what she had seen, let alone tell about it. After all, it's not the kind of thing one talks about with one's mother-in-law. When the door closed behind her mother, Alice let the tears fall. How could he do this to me? Like Liam and Nick. What am I going to tell them all? Finally, the woman calmed down, eager to figure out what to do next. She said to herself, I don't want to live with a traitor as a cheating wife. I don't know why Andrew hasn't divorced me yet. Alice decided not to show that she was aware of her husband's affair and to watch him discreetly to see what his plans were for their future together. Andrew, as usual, came late, did not even have dinner, went to bed, and well thought the woman less I will see him. That night Alice had hardly closed her eyes. She wondered what she'd done wrong. When had their marriage finally worn out? It was possible to fall asleep only when the light outside began to lie down. When the wife woke up, her husband was no longer around, peacefully saying. Waking up, the girl saw that her mother was still asleep. So quietly, so as not to wake her up, brought next to her and fell asleep. Woke them both up with a bell at the door. On the threshold stood Nickel. I noticed that you came back from the store yesterday without a doll, so I thought I'd remedy the situation. Alice stepped away from the door, letting her guest inside. Thank you, but you shouldn't have bothered. I would have bought it another time. The mother-in-law smiled. Don't worry about it, it's true. For my favorite granddaughter, nothing is a pity. The daughter-in-law invited the woman into the kitchen, put the kettle on. Nicole suddenly said, and the foxy doll was just an excuse, really. I came to see you. Alice looked at her husband's mother with surprise. To me, mother-in-law gestured to her daughter-in-law on the table, sit down. The conversation will be long and not very pleasant. Alice slowly lowered herself opposite Raisa Nikolaevna, and the latter began, I saw in what condition you returned from the shopping center yesterday. I'm afraid to assume it has something to do with my son. Alice nodded silently and lowered her gaze. That's what I thought, exclaimed the mother-in-law. Did you see them or did you guess? The daughter-in-law staggered back, glaring at her husband's mother. Did you know about everything? Yes. But don't be so quick to accuse me of complicity. I did it for you and my grandchildren. Alice suddenly laughed hysterically. What are you saying for my sake? You covered up your son's adventures. Turned a blind eye to the fact that he was cheating on me, cheating on my children. Alice, you don't yell. You listen to me, please. Nicole said it in such a tone of voice that her daughter-in-law was instantly silent. Andrew started dating Jenna only 6 months ago, but it's been a whirlwind. Managed to completely turn him against you and the kids. Why do you think he's not divorcing you? Why? Because he doesn't want you to get half of your assets in the divorce. Jenna convinced him to leave you and the kids with nothing. He never mentioned divorce because he was thinking about how to pull off his mistress's scheme. That's what he came up with recently. Nicole was silent. She sipped her tea and continued. Their plan was quite simple. Andrew signed over all his property to me. Then you would be left with nothing in the divorce. And then I'd sign everything back over to him. Alice's eyes widened. She jumped up indignantly. How could he? What about his children? Does he really want to leave them penniless? The mother-in-law said, calm down. He can't do that. I won't let him. Alice looked incredulously at her husband's mother. You, but in what way? Nicole smiled victoriously. Don't forget that I am now the full owner of all your property, and I can write a gift deed to whomever I want. And nothing is more important. I have no grandchildren. I won't even let my own son hurt them. Alice threw herself on her mother-in-law's neck and cried. Just a few days later, Andrew told his wife that he was leaving her. I met someone else. She is much better than you, but you do not get upset. You will keep the children, and I will not claim them. Alice is boiling. Yeah, get out of here. I'll see you in court and we'll talk then. The day has come when their marriage must be dissolved. Andrew hugged Jenna and proudly walked into the courthouse. Saw Alice. The couple began to banter. Scraps of conversation reached the woman. Yeah, the dummy's gonna be my ass and 3 spins. Piece of shit, said Andrew's new girlfriend. Yeah, that's right. Supported her husband and the lovers were laughing loudly. The meeting had already started. When the door suddenly opened, Nicole appeared. Andrew waved affably to his mother, inviting her to sit down beside them. What was his surprise when the woman walked past and sat down next to Alice. Soon the judge officially divorced the couple since they had no property. The divorce went quickly. At the end of the meeting, Alice suddenly jumped up. I have one more document that relates to the case. The judge looked at the papers the woman held out. Actually, the deed of gift in no way relates to the divorce. That's your own business. We're done for the day." Andrew heard what the ex-wife was talking about with the judge and jumped up to her gift deed. What was that all about? Alice, you smirked at your mistress thinking you were the smartest. But I have the strongest support in the person of your mother. Your choice of ally was a miscalculation, darling. And now you're the one who will be left with nothing. Nicole has signed over all of our assets to our children, and I'll be in charge until they come of age. And I said so. Alice turned around, headed toward her mother-in-law. 3 pairs of eyes of her ex-husband, his mistress, and the judge looked at her perplexedly for a long time, all bewildered how so that the mother preferred her son to her daughter-in-law. But in life, and not such things happen. Everyone gets what he deserves.